Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Max Herz with you virtually today. Parker Kelly back at our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Max, how's it going? You are over on the East Coast. I'm in Birmingham, but we're making it work on this Friday morning.
Yeah, I mean, we got it easy, Jake, to be honest with you. Everybody
For sure.
else stuck, still without power. All our producers back in Nashville working hard this week to get to the station. We appreciate them. So, thinking of everybody doesn't really feel right that we're away. It feels like we should be back helping everybody. But, um, yeah, been thinking of everybody at home. Not really sure what the right thing to say about it is, but that's how we're feeling.
No, 100%. It's been strange being on the road for the last week. I'm sure it feels the same way for you, Max. But again, thinking of everybody back there and hoping everybody's staying safe and warm as the effects of the storm continue. Max, you have been out on the East Coast this week, trip to Boston on Tuesday, and last night in New Jersey, both games ending 3-2 in overtime. So the Preds able to pick up a point in both games. But unable to get two. And now that's 5 out of 6 that the Preds have lost. It's been a little bit of a tough stretch here. Not that it was always going to continue to be what it was for about a month there, but Preds have done a nice job of at least being able to get a point in these last two games. But you can start to see the playoff spot slipping away.
Yeah, 5 points out now, and it's certainly still within reach. But this was a defining week for the team, and that's how the team was framing it coming in. And last week was the first time that they hadn't won 2 out of 3 in a week in 7 weeks, which is crazy to think about. And now this week, if they get a win on Saturday, they can have a 500 points percentage for the week with a 1-0-2 record, but they've lost both these games so far. And it's tough places to play. It's teams that are hungry and teams that are either pushing for playoff spots in the Devils case, or teams in the Islanders and the Bruins that are trying to improve their playoff standing and make sure that they get in. So it's 3 tough places to play, teams that all provide their own unique challenges. And it's interesting. The first game, the Preds never led and they lost 3-2 in overtime. Then last night they never trailed and lost 3-2 in overtime. So certainly winnable games. And the Preds had won 4 in a row in 3-on-3 overtime before this week, and now they've lost 2 in a row, and they've both been quick losses too.
Right. I was about to say kind of different ways that it happened, even though the score ended up the same. But in overtime, both goals end up coming in the opening minute. And it is tough in 3-on-3 overtime. Like that's why they moved it to 3-on-3, was because they wanted those games to end faster. But when you lose that opening faceoff, it becomes tough to get the puck back. And there are going to be some pretty significant scoring chances like we saw for Boston and New Jersey.
Yeah, they never touched it against the Bruins on Tuesday night. And
Right.
the Bruins had Mark Kastelik, their fourth line center, out for the overtime faceoff. He beat Ryan O'Reilly on the draw, and then he goes right off. They bring Murat Husnudinov on, and the Preds were ready for something. They had 2 defensemen on the ice for OT, like they did for McDavid and Draisaitl a few weeks ago. And against the Oilers, it worked. Against the Bruins, it didn't. They went with the weave, and Pasternak ended up just tapping it in right behind UC Saros. So that was an unsuccessful mission. Last night, Ryan O'Reilly did win the opening faceoff, and Philip Forsberg got a shot, missed the net, and the Preds never got the puck back from there.
Yep. And again, giving up the 2 goals within a minute in both games. Get the point, which is important on the road, getting a point in Boston, in New Jersey. But again, like you mentioned, Preds now 5 points out of playoff positioning. You talk about UC Saros there. I don't blame UC Saros for the loss in Boston, which and then last night was Justus Sonnen. But a little bit of a tough week for UC Saros last week at home. We had talked about the Buffalo game. He gets pulled, and then Utah gives up 5 goals on Saturday. What have you seen from UC Saros, who was a big reason why the Preds were winning so much throughout the month of December and January?
Yeah, I don't think it's been a dip for him. I think it's been a dip in the team's play in front of him.
Yep.
That Saturday game against Utah was really disappointing, and I don't know if it was the fact that it was a half house and not a great home environment because of the snow that let the team down.
Right.
Like, that shouldn't be an excuse, but No, they didn't come to play in what was the biggest game of the year. So that was probably the most disappointing result of these last couple weeks, and that was one that they really needed to swing in a different direction, and they didn't get it, and they didn't have a push late when they were down multiple goals, and they didn't show the fight that they've shown the last couple months, and that left me and everybody pretty disappointed.
Yeah, and it looked like the Preds were pushing and they were going to get themselves right back into the playoff race, but the last couple of weeks have put them a little bit behind the eight ball here, as we mentioned, 5 points behind. Trying to think of who is in that last spot. Anaheim is in that last wild card spot right now, so the Predators have some work to do. We'll look ahead at this upcoming week, but does it feel in general like this week is really important? You've got now 4 games remaining until the Olympic break, and I know Barry Trotz said when he was on DVD the other day that these games aren't going to play a huge role in what he does at the trade deadline, but it would feel important to make one final statement heading into the Olympic break over this next week.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And look, the other thing looming that Barry Trotz is really thinking about is the trade deadline is really just a week after the Olympics. So
right.
You've got now 4 games remaining before the Olympics, Saturday, which is tomorrow, Monday, next Wednesday, and next Thursday. Then you have 3 full weeks without a game. Then coming out of the Olympics, you have just 5 games before the trade deadline. So, I mean, it's at the point where buy-sell decisions are being made by the general managers. And I think no matter how close the Preds are, I think what you heard from Barry Trotz in that interview you referenced, I think his mind may be made up that he's at least going to sell something,
right?
Without a lot of games left to flip that before the deadline hits.
Yes, and we will get into that a little bit more throughout the show of what the Predators could be thinking. Are they, even if they are sellers, how much of a seller are you? And we'll talk about that more. But again, Boston, New Jersey trips, you get the point. But right now, it feels like the Preds need 2 points in a big way coming up tomorrow against New York. And again, that is a 6 o'clock puck drop out there on Long Island against the Islanders. Max, before we move on, just looking back at last night's game, you mentioned the Preds never trail, but they do give up that goal with about 10 minutes left to play. What stood out specifically in that game? Philip Forsberg scores his 20th goal of the game, 20th goal of the season. But overall, just could not quite make enough plays down the stretch to get that win.
Yeah, I'm curious what the players would have to say about that effort, because I think they did do enough to win and they played a pretty good road game. But it ended up kind of being an uneventful game. Justus Annunen made a lot of big saves early on, and then the Preds played with the lead for a lot of it, but they ended up letting the Devils tie it up, which I think would be the part of the game they're most disappointed in.
Yeah.
And then in overtime, like a great player walks in, makes a perfect shot, but the Preds didn't really step to him as much as they could have guarded Nico Hischier. And it was Roman Josi, who's about to be teammates with him in a couple weeks in the Team Switzerland for the Olympics, who was the closest to him. So I think that was an overtime play the Preds could have defended differently. I don't know how much you can gripe about overtime results. Like, that's not really a thing that teams practice very much. And you had the puck, you had to look for Forsberg. So it's almost like overtime is now just like a shootout where it's one chance and you really got to pick your perfect spot. And then the other team's going to get one. And the Preds didn't score on their chance, and then the Devils scored on theirs. So I think the thing really that puts a stain on the loss is that Jack Hughes got hurt in the first period for the Devils and never came back. And they wish they could have taken advantage of a team missing their number one center. But it was 2 desperate teams. I think the Preds were probably the better team in regulation, and the Devils get the win in overtime, and that's how it goes sometimes in 3-on-3.
Yep, that's just how it works in overtime hockey. The Preds fall in overtime for the second straight game. Now lost 5 out of 6. They'll look to bounce back tomorrow against the New York Islanders to wrap up this 3-game road trip. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to text or call, our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. On the other side, the Preds did make a transaction yesterday. Fedor Svechkov was sent down. We'll talk about him, some of the other young guys who haven't quite taken the next step this year for the Predators, as Svechkov has now been sent down to Milwaukee. 615-737-1025. Max Herz in with us for the full first hour of the show. Connor Newt will join us coming up at 10. Keep it right here. More coming up. Talking Preds here on Next Man Up, 102.5 The Game. 94.9 The Fan is your home for Vanderbilt women's basketball. Today, the number 5 Commodores take on number 17 Ole Miss at 2 p.m. and pregame begins at 1:45 right here from beautiful Birmingham, Alabama. So I will be hopping off a little bit early from the show today. Connor Newt's going to come in, but I will be with you up until 11 o'clock. But we do have Max Herz with us, and Max, there he is. Max just hopped back in. We've got Max Herz with us for the full first hour talking Preds here. And Max, some news yesterday. Fedor Svechkov, 22-year-old center, has been sent down to Milwaukee after 49 games with the Predators. He had just 9 points this season. In your opinion, from what you've seen, why do you think Fedor Svechkov wasn't able to take that next step forward this year? Because I know there was a lot of hope that he would be a big piece of this team, especially offensively this season.
Yeah, it's interesting. And getting to know Svechkov, I think, first of all, the thing that stands out to me is that he understood where he was at and he understood that he wasn't producing enough offensively. But I also think he didn't let it get him down too much. And like the fact that sophomore slumps are so common did register with him. And I think he didn't let it tank the other areas of his game, whereas other young players might have let that happen. Like I think he was still pretty defensively responsible. I think he was okay on faceoffs this year. And I think he wasn't terrible in the offensive zone, despite the fact that he wasn't producing. And there were games where he saw it. But it got to the point where the Predators' veteran players were playing so well, and Svechkov was certainly no longer part of the top 6. And as of this week, no longer part of the top 9 or even going to be a part of the lineup for these last few games, where the Preds figured, hey, he can go down without waivers. We want him to go down to the AHL. And the way Andrew Brunette phrased it was, we want him to play big minutes. We want him to touch the puck a ton. We want him to be the top line center for the Admirals. And in their game tonight in Des Moines, Iowa, presumably he will be their number 1 center. They want him to play top power play. They want him to play PK. And he hadn't really been playing either special teams for the Preds the last month and a half. So I think it's a fair move for everybody. It's something that they had tried to stay away from as long as they could, and it had to happen at this point. So, yeah, it's not a happy moment for either side for sure, but Svechkov understands that he'll be back. I think he'll take this all in stride. Everybody in Milwaukee obviously loves him, and they want him to get back to the NHL.
And he is just 22. I think you can look at this and say, man, that we had high hopes that he was going to be, like you said, a top 6 forward for this team. And yeah, it wasn't as good as you thought it would be. But again, he has so much room to develop. I think you hope that, like you said, he takes it in stride, and maybe heading into next year, he can take that big next step. But obviously disappointing for the Predators right now. When you look at some of the other young guys that maybe could get opportunities, we're going to talk a little bit about the trade deadline coming up. But as you get later in the season, you would expect some more young guys to get opportunities. We haven't seen much of Zach LaRue. I know he got hurt early on. Some other young guys down there at Milwaukee. Do you see anybody that maybe has earned themselves a chance at the NHL level that hasn't really gotten it this season so far?
Yeah, I think LaRue will almost definitely be up if the Predators make sell moves at the deadline. And I mean, you can think about who the players are who are similar to the guys on expiring contracts that might be traded away. I think LaRue fits Bunting's profile very well. And I think Bunting is a very valuable player that if playoff teams start lining up and want him as a rental, I think the Preds could get a very good return for Michael Bunting. And I think Bunting is a great fit with the Preds, and I think he would be someone that, in my eyes, they should approach again in the offseason about potentially returning. But LaRue fits that same PES middle 6 left wing role. He's been playing really well in Milwaukee these last few weeks. He scored the game-winning overtime goal in their outdoor game in -8-degree temperatures. Like, that's the headline moment, but he's been performing really well, and he was someone who was really close to making the team out of camp and is hungry to get his chance, and I think could make a good mark over the last few months of the season here. The other player who Barry Trotz mentioned this week was defenseman Ryan Ufko, who played one NHL game at the end of last year, his NHL debut. He has been the number 1 D for Milwaukee all year. on a team with guys with a lot of NHL experience and also guys like Tanner Molendijk who have higher prospect status than Ufko does. So it's been a really good year for Ufko, and Barry Trotz said they had thought about bringing him up this week. They went with Andreas Englund instead, since Nick Hague is the one who's out, and Englund is the player who matches Hague's profile, big left-handed defenseman with a physical presence. Um, It'll be interesting to see what the Preds do on the back end at the deadline. Like the Rangers just traded Carson Soucy to the Islanders for a third-round pick this week. Is Nick Blankenburg more valuable than Carson Soucy as a right-handed defenseman? They're very different players, but I think if you need an offensive right-handed defenseman, I think Blankenburg is a player that teams would want at the deadline who's a free agent this summer. So, I mean, if Blankenburg gets traded, to me, that's a no-brainer that Ufko comes up to replace him. The deadline will play itself out, but I think those are the guys who match up most closely with the players that the Preds would be trading away. And if Haula gets traded, does Svechkov come right back up to play center? Yeah. Or would they rather play it safe and go with Jake Lucchini for the rest of the year as a more veteran guy and let Svechkov develop in the AHL? So all these decisions are contingent on earlier decisions that get made with the front office and the trades and the moves and all of that. But I think the young guys will get their looks here if the Predators are sellers in a few weeks.
Right. All the dominoes have to fall, and then the corresponding moves are going to tell us which young players are going to get their opportunities at the NHL level. Sticking on the young guys for now, we've had a lot of conversations about Matthew Wood this season. Obviously got off to such a great start this year, but he has just 1 point since December 11th, not getting a ton of ice time. What do you see from Matthew Wood? Is this a guy who at 20 years old, maybe just hitting a little bit of that rookie wall, or have you seen any concerns in his game over the last month or so?
Yeah, he's definitely not producing. He's still getting chances, I think. And I think it's kind of like what I said about Svechkov, where his offensive game is in an acceptable spot, despite the fact that he isn't generating anything. And defensively, I think he's still doing his job. And look, if he weren't, he wouldn't be in the lineup. And like Svechkov, he can go down to Milwaukee without waivers, and they've chosen to keep Wood up here. I would assume at least until the Olympic break. And then I don't know what they're thinking about him in terms of whether Milwaukee would be a possibility. But yeah, he hasn't scored a goal in 22 games, and he has 1 assist in those 22 games. There are also 3 games in there when he was healthy scratch. So it's 25 team games in total since his last goal on December 6th. And obviously it's frustrating for Wood, who's been a big goal scorer throughout all of his teenage years at all the amateur levels. In college, he was a big point producer at both UConn and Minnesota. So it's definitely frustrating for Wood. And I think like Svechkov, he's maturely handled it. He turns 21 in a week and a half. So like he's such a young guy.
Right.
But wouldn't it be good to see Wood get back to his production down the stretch this year? Like when he first got to 8 goals, he was in the top 5 in rookie goal scoring. And now he's still at 8 goals almost 2 full months later. So to see him get back there would be something really exceptional for the Preds' future. I think he'll get a shot in the middle 6 down the stretch if he's in the NHL late in the season. And I think the Olympic break will do good for him too, to have some time off.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you wonder if it's just, if it can be a mental thing at this point where he has gone, like you said, 22 games without a goal. Just we talk about it in basketball all the time of just needing to see one go down. Like maybe he just needs to get one in the net, and that can open the floodgates a little bit for him after what was an unbelievable first couple of weeks to his season when he first got healthy.
Yeah, and like last night, he was on a new line, and it was the 4th line. So McCarron and Smith have moved up to the 3rd line. They've always played bigger minutes than 4th line, but with Marcia, so they are really the 3rd line in every way. So the 4th line last night was Svechkov going down to the AHL, Tyson Jost at center, with Wood on left wing and Ozzy Weisblatt on right wing. That line played a lot. And I thought they played meaningful, impactful, and positive shifts, and they had the puck in the offensive zone quite a bit. So I don't think it's that Wood has been so far away from a goal. I think he's been robbed a couple times.
Right.
I think he's been a setup man a couple times, and he hasn't always been with the finishers. So it's a tough spot for him. I think he understands where he's at. You got to remember, he's a coach's son. He's someone who thinks the game so clearly and so well. I'm not too worried about him mentally or play wise because look, I mean, they got to have somebody in there, you know, like
Right.
they can't send every single young guy down to fix their game at the same time. So it's a matter of who's here, whether they're producing or not, and who's going to give you a shot at secondary scoring, even if it's just one goal a week or one goal every 5 games.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you have any questions for Max Herz, he's with us until the top of the hour. Talking Preds, Predators, back-to-back overtime losses, getting points in Boston and New Jersey. They'll finish up the road trip tomorrow night on Long Island, not in Long Island, on Long Island, taking on the New York Islanders. Again, 615-737-1025 is the phone number. When we come back, Barry Trotz did have some comments on DVD this week about the trade deadline and specifically about Ryan O'Reilly. And I want to talk about the factor coming up next. Max Herz with us for the full first hour of the show. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025, The Game. Jake Lyman, Max Herz, Parker Kelly with you. Max with us for the full first hour talking Preds. Preds wrapping up their 3-game road trip on the East Coast, taking on the Islanders tomorrow night. Max, the trade deadline is coming up quick, and I know it's still well over a month away, but with the Olympic break and the 3 weeks off that come with it, there aren't a whole lot of data points that you're going to see before the trade deadline comes. And Barry Trotz, we talked about it earlier on. He was on DVD and was asked about basically, is this next stretch before the Olympic break going to make much of an impact on your mindset at the deadline? He basically said no. So it may not be a question of whether the Predators are sellers. It's just how much do they sell when the deadline rolls around.
Yeah, I think you've got the correct read there. And the trade deadline is Friday afternoon, March 6th, which is a full month away, but the Preds don't play between February 5th and 26th for the Olympics. So, I mean, there are only 9 more games between now and the trade deadline, even though it's a full month. And those games come in 2 pretty busy weeks, one before the Olympic break and this next week, and the first week out of the Olympic break, February 26th through March 5th, when the Preds will have 2 road games and 3 home games in 8 days coming right back from the Olympics. So no, I read the same thing into what Barry Trotz said as you did. And I think it is the reasonable and fair thing for him to be drawing from this team's season. And look, kudos for the team for making it a tough decision, if nothing else. I'm so impressed with the way the players have improved from last year to this year. And no matter what it leads to, I think it's been a pleasant surprise externally for the players to do what they knew they were capable of. I think the coaches, the players, have all held up their end of the bargain and shown Barry Trotz, hey, the team that you brought together here that was such a dud last year was nowhere near as bad as what last year's results showed. So I think that makes everybody feel a little better, if nothing else, even if they do become sellers.
Right. I think that's a really good point, is that after last year, and then you have that stretch where you lose 11 out of 13 through November and into December, and it would have been easy, I think, for a lot of teams to just fold in that moment and say, well, last year was such a dud, we're on the same track, but they really responded well. And you're right, they made it a tough decision on Barry Trotz. But when you look at the future of this team, what's going to help the Predators get back to being a Stanley Cup contender more? Is it fighting and trying to get that second wild card spot, or getting some extra picks, some extra prospects that can help get this team more talent to move forward around the core that they currently have?
Yeah, and I think the answer to that is pretty easy, that the future in a situation where it could really be a seller's market at the deadline, the future is definitely what you need to consider first and foremost. And look, also, if you don't make the playoffs, your own draft pick is going to be a pretty good player here too. This seems like a really deep, definitely top 5, maybe even top 10 in the draft this year, coming out of the World Juniors. Like there are some draft eligible guys who are big names and could be in the NHL next season, potentially 5 to 7 of them.
Yeah, and it is funny. You look at the Preds and you can say they're only 5 points out of a playoff spot right now, but because of the East and how deep it is, the Rangers are the only team in the East with less points than the Predators. So the Preds would, I guess, have the 7th best odds at the number 1 pick as it stands right now. So you are right that the Predators probably going to have a high draft pick again, especially if they are sellers. Max, the one big name that gets brought up when you talk about possible trade deadline moves is Ryan O'Reilly. And there's been opportunities, I'm sure, for Barry Trotz to trade Ryan O'Reilly in the past. And I think it would still, like he always says, it needs to be an offer that knocks his socks off. But I do think if it is a seller's market, that maybe there is an offer for Ryan O'Reilly that might just be too good to turn down.
I think it needs to be an incomprehensibly massive return to trade him. And I think there are 20 teams that want him, first of all, especially because he has another full season remaining on his contract.
Yep.
I start the bidding at 2 firsts, a big name prospect, and a young center who's someone who you can plug in for the rest of the year and potentially use in the future as well. This is a player whose value is 99 out of 100 video game rating style in every single category. The tangibles, the intangibles. He leads your team in points and assists. He's a point per game. He's your top line center. He's your power play center. He's your PK guy. He's your face-off guy. He is your leader. He is everything intangibly that you could ever want. He's probably your best defensive forward and potentially the best defensive forward in the NHL. He's a guy who wins you possessions. He wins you pucks. He wins you goals. He keeps goals out of the net. He defends the other team's top line. I could go all day about how valuable Ryan O'Reilly is. And first of all, it's so incredible that he's on the Preds, because where would they be without him this year?
Yeah.
And if you are going to trade a player like that away, I think it needs to be a trade that changes your outlook.
No, 100%. I mean, especially with another year on his contract, it's not like the Predators are all that far off from being a playoff team. And, a couple right moves here and there, a couple of young players develop, and you could have Ryan O'Reilly as a huge piece of a team that's contending to get back into the dance next year. So I think you have to get an offer that you can't refuse for Ryan O'Reilly, because he's just as valuable to you as he would be somewhere else. It probably has to be some team that feels like he is the missing piece that makes them a Stanley Cup contender this year and is willing to mortgage the future to get Ryan O'Reilly in their building.
I think there are 15 teams that you could make the argument that he's their missing piece, right?
Yeah.
To me, it should be a bidding war if Ryan O'Reilly is available. And seeing the NHLers who draw overpays at the deadline, like Brandon Carlo going from the Bruins to the Leafs last year for a first-round pick, and Fraser Minton, who's a young center who's having an awesome season for the Bees right now, and they got a first-round pick along with it. It's trades like that players who are solid, but they're not number one guys. To me, Carlo is not a true Cup champion number one defenseman. He's a top pair guy. He's a shutdown guy. But to me, he's not that winning pedigree in every way like Ryan O'Reilly is. Just seeing these other trades, I don't know. I think I've made myself clear. This is a player who should return everything you want if you trade him.
It is funny looking at the NHL trade deadline compared to, and I think the closest you could compare it to is the MLB trade deadline, because it's usually prospects for players. And in baseball, there's so many GMs that hoard their prospects and are so scared to trade away these future guys. In the NHL, it feels like there's no fear at all. It's like, all right, this guy's going to help us get into Stanley Cup contention this year. Give him whatever it takes. And that might play in the Preds' favor if they become big sellers at the deadline this year.
I mean, it's we know it. Marty Erat for Philip Forsberg.
Right.
A rental trade for a player who has been on your team for years, who you know what you're getting and is one of the better Preds forwards of all time. But you get a player who was drafted less than a year ago in the first round, who you wanted, and you didn't pick until after he went. You scouted this guy like crazy. Your Swedish and European scouts are saying this guy is going to be a star, and you're able to get him for a player that you knew you were going to trade away that year at that time with that contract, with your situation in the standings. And he's the leading goal scorer in franchise history in a lifetime Pred.
It's true. I mean, that is how the NHL works. Is these GMs, they realize that if you get in there and you find a couple of missing pieces, you can make a run and go win a Stanley Cup. And if you do it, no one's going to remember the prospects you gave up to go get it done. So the Preds maybe could have that playing in their advantage if they end up being big sellers at the deadline. Still over a month until the trade deadline, but the Olympic break coming up in a week. The Predators playing 4 games in the next 6 days heading into the Olympic break. We will preview the week and talk about what the Preds can get done. Coming back home for 2 after this game against New against the New York Islanders tomorrow night, and then wrapping up before the Olympic break in Washington. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Jake Lyman, Max Herz, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 1025 The Game. Jake Lyman, Max Herz, Parker Kelly with you. Final segment with Max here on this Friday. Always great to talk Preds with Max Herz. And it is a busy week coming up for the Nashville Predators leading into the Olympic break at the New York Islanders tomorrow on Long Island. That is a 6 o'clock puck drop, 5 o'clock pregame right here on 1025 The Game. And then 3 games in 4 days to take you into the Olympic break. 2 at home in Smashville against the Blues and the Wild, and then at Washington next Thursday to send us into that 3-week Olympic break. This is an important week, Max. We talked about it. You've got 4 games in 6 days. You're currently slipping out of playoff position. If this team wants to inch their way back in, feels like you've got to come through with some big wins over these next 6 days.
Yeah, and 3 of the 4 games are against teams that are in playoff spots right now. The Islanders have been really good recently. They're third in the Metropolitan Division. Matthew Schaefer's leading the way. Like he's he's got it going right now. The rookie number 1 pick defenseman. He's been fun to watch for the Islanders. He's letting his personality come out. He's leading the way. Matt Barzal and Bo Horvat have been good. Like, they're getting production. They don't have Brock Nelson anymore. Kyle Palmieri's out for the year. Like, it's kind of a younger, more fun Islanders team, less of the grizzled Islanders Lou Lamoriello squad that you came to know and love for such a long time. And I don't know if anybody really loved them, but it was always like, hey, these guys look like they just came out of a freaking war every time they play. So if nothing else, that was endearing. But now they're a different type of endearing. So the Preds just saw them a couple weeks ago at home, and they'll match up against them on the island tomorrow. Islanders feel great. They just swept the Rangers in a home-and-home. They swept the season series, and Matthew Schaefer said something when he got drafted or at rookie camp about how he never wants to lose to the Rangers his entire career, and he's 4-0 so far. So good for him.
Yeah, and that Islanders game in Nashville, 3 weeks ago, was a really fun one that ended in a shootout. I remember getting home from Vandy to watch that game. UC Saros standing on his head, making a couple of huge saves. So we can only hope that we get one just as entertaining tomorrow night.
Yeah, Saturday night, Long Island, I think should yield a fun crowd. They're going pretty crazy for their team out here right now. So
yeah.
They have great fans when the team brings it here. So looking forward to that one. And then next week, the Blues is definitely a must win on Monday. That's a team below you. That's a team missing a lot of their firepower right now with injuries. So regardless of even if some of those guys, Kyrou and Thomas, are back in for that game, you need to take care of that one. Then the Wild will come in. They are one of the best teams in the league, and it'll be the first time we see Quinn Hughes in Minnesota green in Nashville. And then next Thursday, you finish it up on a back-to-back in DC against the Capitals. So that's a tough assignment. Last game against the break, back end of a back-to-back with travel. The Caps will not be on a back-to-back for that game. Yep. So that's going to be a really tough one to win going into the break, but what a win that would be to go into the break with.
And just logistically, I wonder, would all of the Olympians for the Preds just go straight across the Atlantic from there? I guess it would make sense, right? Or are they coming back to Nashville after that game against Washington?
I would guess that they are going straight from DC, but I don't know that for certain. The players also, the players also bringing their families with them, so I don't know if that makes it easier or harder.
Right.
But the opening ceremony is a week from today. So the Preds players and athletic trainer Kevin Morley will not be there for the opening ceremony. There are a few NHLers who will be flying all day Thursday to get there for the opening ceremony on Friday. Like Leon Draisaitl is Germany's male flag bearer, and the Oilers play Wednesday night in Edmonton. So he is somehow getting from Edmonton to Milan, Italy in one full day of like American daytime. And with the European time, this is even tougher. So I don't know how he's going to get there in time. I don't think it's a sure thing because he'll have to take at least 2 commercial flights, right? Like at least Edmonton to Toronto to Milan. So it's going to be interesting. But yeah, the women's tournament begins before the opening ceremony, women's hockey. So the women's hockey prelims basically will be done by the time the men's hockey prelims get going.
Wow. Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule right now. So it's going to be busy over there. The women's prelims start on Thursday next week. And then the men, the first game, if I keep scrolling, first game is Wednesday, February 11th. So a little under 2 weeks away. And Finland will actually start off the men's prelim round in Group B. So we'll get to see a couple of Preds in that one.
Yeah, Finland versus Slovakia is their first game.
Yes, right? And then followed up by Sweden and Italy. Yeah. So we will get plenty of Preds on day one of Olympic hockey.
Nice. Yeah, that's one of the groups. And then Friday, February 13th is probably the biggest game of the men's prelims from a Preds and non-Preds perspective. Finland versus Sweden on Friday, February 13th. And the majority of these games will be in the late morning Nashville time also. And they are all on the USA Network, which is a channel that has people might watch for soap operas or things like that.
Yeah, it's like a
hospital dramas.
When True TV turns off the Impractical Jokers reruns for March Madness every single year. That's basically what it is.
Yeah. So yeah, there's no more NBC Sports Network. So that is now
Right.
NBC's Sports Network. But yeah, I think every US game will be on that channel. Some of the European games might be streaming only and you need a Peacock subscription for them, but
Right.
we'll talk through that more next week because honestly, I haven't even diagnosed the full schedule. I haven't made my watching game plan yet. But next week,
Right.
once the last Preds game is in the books, we can literally just sit and read the Olympic schedule because that would honestly be helpful for me, Jake, because I have to make my plan too.
Yeah, you know what? Next week when Max is on, we will spend a full segment of just like our watch guide for the Olympics if you want to see all the Predators play. So we can make that happen. But
Yeah,
again,
can we just be the TV guide channel for an hour?
yeah, there we go. We will list it off. It is Finland versus Sweden starts at 2 p.m. on USA Network. We can get all of that for you next week. It's crazy to think that the Olympics are a week away, but the Predators still some work to do with those 4 games coming up. Again, they are on the road for one more against the Islanders tomorrow night. That is a 6 o'clock puck drop, 5 o'clock pregame, and then back in Smashville for those 2 games against the Blues and the Wild next week. Anything specific to look forward to for those games in Smashville, Max, coming up on Monday and Wednesday?
Well, hopefully some good games to send you guys off with. Also,
Right.
some giveaways too. Monday is the next run in our Smashville Sports Series. So we already had the football and basketball jerseys that have been very popular this year. And next up, it's hockey night, but
Oh,
it is USA. Excuse me, USA hockey night. So it's a Miracle on Ice style sweater with NSH on the front instead of USA and Smashville on the back for the first 5,000 fans Monday night. And then Wednesday night is Luke Bryan bobblehead night. So we got the Smashville
wow.
Sports Series and the Music City bobblehead series clocking back in this week as a reward for you guys for braving the tough winter week.
Yes, those will be must get out to get out there for. I was out there a couple of weeks ago and got the Dirks Bentley bobblehead, and I have it displayed prominently in my apartment now. So
Good.
maybe I'll have to get out there for the Luke Bryan one. You said that's on Wednesday.
Wednesday night, Luke Bryan national anthem too. So
Oh, yeah, you
come
know
get
what?
it.
I am we'll be traveling to Kentucky on Wednesday night, so I will miss it. But I at least have Dirks sitting up proudly on my mantle. Max, thanks as always for joining us, and hope you're enjoying the East Coast. I know it is strange for both of us not to be in Nashville at this point, but I saw you got out there to a Celtics game earlier in the week, so hope you're enjoying the trip up there, and hopefully the Preds can get one more win coming back on Saturday.
Yeah, we miss everybody. We've had a lot of folks reach out that they're listening this week. So thanks for joining us. We really wish we could do more to help from afar. I feel pretty helpless thinking about everybody back home. And many members of our traveling group also are trying to figure out things from afar for their families. So
Right.
we are with you guys in many regards. And look, as always, the Preds are doing everything they can to help and are doing as much as they can to raise money and help with food banks right now. But like once the call to mobilize and to help things in the community comes, once hopefully everything's a little melted and resettled, we know we'll be there. So yeah, we'll be back with you guys next week and we'll be helping out.
Right. Yes. And it's been the same here with lots of people on the Vandy staff have been trying to figure out things back home while we've been on the road. It's been strange, but thinking of everybody back there in Middle Tennessee and hopefully the weather can get up above freezing here and start to melt some of that ice away. Max, enjoy Long Island, and hopefully the Preds can beat the Islanders tomorrow night. We will talk to you next week when we officially go into the Olympic break next Friday.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Parker.
Max Herz from Preds Radio joining us as he always does for the full first hour of the show. We've got much more to come here on Next Man Up. Robert Saleh was introduced as the Titans head coach yesterday. We will dive deep into what he had to say and how we feel about Robert Saleh and his coaching staff as we head towards a new era of Titans football. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. Jake Lyman, Parker Kelly, Next Man Up, 1025 The Game. Parker, is Connor there in person, or is he going to be on Zoom? Second hour, next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Connor Newt, Parker Kelly, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Big thanks, as always, to Max Herz for joining us in the first hour talking Preds. But Connor is now live in studio. Connor, what's going on?
Jake, I hope you're doing well. I feel like you're afraid to come see me in studio, but that's okay.
We're doing okay. I have no complaints at all being here in this hotel in Birmingham, but it will be nice to finally get home today.
Have you been stranded there this whole time?
Yeah, this is a week straight.
Oh yeah. Did you bring the PlayStation?
So I did not.
Oh, brutal.
So it's been okay. I have no complaints given what lots of people are having to deal with back in Middle Tennessee. So, but will be nice to finally get home today. Vandy women's basketball playing Ole Miss, top 20 matchup, and that is at 2:00 on 94.9 The Fan, given why I will have to get out of here at 11, but Connor and Parker will take you the rest of the way. But Connor, yesterday, Robert Saleh finally introduced as the next Titans head coach. He had a lot of interesting things to say. As Parker and I talked about yesterday, he was always going to win the press conference, but it did seem like it was overall a good start for Robert Saleh. What were your initial impressions from what you heard from the newest Titans head coach yesterday?
Pretty much what I was preaching he would be. Obviously, it's on paper. We don't know what kind of an on-the-field coach he's going to be just yet as a head coach. But look, he's a football guy. He's a leader of men. He talks a lot, and I think he's not afraid to back it up. He's very, very aggressive, passionate about the game, and he was always going to win the press conference unless he said something completely egregious. Look, even Brian Callahan won the press conference a couple years ago. So I was really impressed with some of the things that he had to say. I was really happy that he was able and open enough to detail kind of some parts of the plan he has for the team, including Cam Ward and what he plans to do as far as calling the plays for defense. How does Brian Daboll fit into the whole scheme? I'm sure you and I will get into all of that throughout our time together. But overall, I think I was pretty impressed with the press conference. I'm excited for the hire. Look, I'm not going to lie to you and say I wasn't the one or one of the ones here preaching that this would be the right hire. So I'm happy. I'm not ready to take a victory lap and say I told you so yet, just because we don't know what he looks like on the field yet. But so far, obviously, with the presser, I'm excited about the hire. I'm excited about the growth of the team. He's a developmental guy, so I'm excited to see him kind of take some of these players and see if he can get them to the next step. So, future, I'm excited about the future for the Titans.
I think you can look and say that the Titans are making logical decisions over the last couple of weeks. I mean, they're hiring people that have the reputation and the resume that makes you feel better about the way this team is trending. But as you said, actions speak louder than words. We're going to see what Robert Saleh does on the field when September rolls around. But overall, I thought it was good. We're going to get into a lot of the things he said, especially about Cam Ward. But I did have a couple of just initial thoughts on Robert Saleh. He feels like such a football guy. When he stepped up to the podium there and gave that little opening statement, I thought that was, that's kind of what I want from a head coach. Yeah, you want a guy who's going to be eloquent and you can understand what he's saying, but he looked like a guy who just didn't fit in a suit and tie. He wanted to be out there coaching football already. And then, of course, the fast and violent answer where he paused, he thought about it, and still decided to go with a four-letter word on talking some blank. But playing with swag, playing fast and violent. I liked what Robert Saleh came out and kind of the basis of what he was trying to show that he is as a coach. Fast and violent, all gas, no brakes. I love to hear it from Robert Saleh.
Yeah, look, he's going to be compared to Vrabel a lot just because they're similar style coaches. They're both defensive coaches. But I didn't get the vibe that I got from Vrabel in his introductory press conference that this guy is brash and arrogant. Vrabel is, I guess you could say, the good kind of brash and arrogant. Like he'll be prickly sometimes, but
it's good when he's winning.
Right. We learned that one the hard way. But Robert Saleh just seems like a good person. Like he seems like, although he's fast and intense on the football field, he seems like a pretty down-to-earth guy. I guess you would have to be if you have 8 children. So kudos to him. But I think I want to say football field Robert Saleh is going to be different than human being Robert Saleh. But I don't care about human being Robert Saleh right now. I care about football field Robert Saleh. What does he look like as a coach on the field? And a lot has to happen this offseason. You got to get to the draft. You got to see what you do there, free agency. There's a lot that has to happen. And I sound like a Titans representative right now, but it's true. We got a lot of work to do before we're ready to say that this team is capable of competing for a Super Bowl. And I think this hire is a step in the right direction. I think that press conference was a step in the right direction because it kind of gave you some insight and some background knowledge as to what you're getting into. But again, I'm excited for the future. I'm excited to see how things tend to develop with Robert Saleh at the helm. Cam Ward, that plan seems like it's very, very detailed, very intricate. It's obvious the guys on the defensive line like him. I mean, get you a woman that looks at Robert Saleh the way Jeffrey Simmons looked at him yesterday in that picture that hit the interwebs. So I think you're already seeing it. I think the players are kind of unified in this hire and they like it. They want to play for a leader of men. And Jeffrey Simmons was one that talked about it all off season and even throughout the season, not off season, throughout the season, that they need a leader to step in. They need someone to come in and just be this leader of men, this rah-rah, intense football coach. And I think Robert Saleh is just the guy. So we'll see how it works out on the field. But as far as the press conference, it's hard to lose an introductory press conference, but I certainly feel Robert Saleh won.
Yeah, I liked almost everything I heard from Robert Saleh. And I did like you said with Jeffrey Simmons, that a lot of the players came out. Cam Ward was out there. Most of the rookies in general were out there. So I thought that was good to see. There was one comment that I don't want to say like turned me off, but it raised a red flag.
Is it the one I'm thinking of?
It's when he was asked about what changes he's going to make from the Jets, and he was talking about play calling. And the way he said it, I understand where he was coming from, that he feels like he is more involved in the game and can feel the impact that the players are making when he's calling plays. But the comment that, it wasn't a big deal, but it did get my attention, was when he said, when I wasn't calling plays, I felt like I was just the timeout and red flag guy. And that's basically what Brian Callahan said after he stopped calling plays, was I didn't know what to do with myself. And I don't worry about it, but it did catch my attention a little bit that was a very similar comment of, hey, Callahan, when he wasn't calling plays, he felt like he didn't know what he was doing. I'm glad Saleh's calling plays, but it did get my attention that I was like, oh, we've heard that before, of not knowing what to do with yourself when you're not the play caller.
Yeah, that's true. I understand where he's coming from, though. Like, a majority of coaches in this league that are head coaches are play callers, offensively or defensively. So I'm glad that he's calling defensive plays. We know what he is as a coordinator, and obviously I think that's going to continue over here. But yeah, you're right, Jake. I think that does raise a bit of an eyebrow just because it's so familiar. It's something you heard recently. And
right.
But I think I understand where he's coming from, because in a way he's right. When you're the head coach, yes, you're responsible for the entire roster. Yes, you're responsible for being the leader of those players, but in game, you're kind of just the red flag and timeout guy, like he said. Like, those are really the only things you can do. I think you can weigh in on play calling, but you've got coordinators who are basically helming that. So obviously we saw this with Brian Callahan when he gave up play calling duties to Bo Hardegree. Bo Hardegree became the head coach of the offense, and then you had Denard Wilson, who was the head coach of the defense. So I understand where it's coming from, but you're right, Jay. I think it's eyebrow raising just because it's so familiar. It's something we just heard.
Exactly. It was something that we felt like was a flaw with Brian Callahan, and hearing the same thing. But Robert Saleh did come back later in the press conference and talked about how involved he was going to be when it comes to offensive game planning and special teams, and he was going to have his hands across the entire roster, which is what I want to hear. He needs to be a CEO type, even if he is still calling those defensive plays. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. 6877 says Callahan didn't know how to call plays either, so there's that.
That's true.
Wes from Hermitage says, we were all worried about Phillip Rivers getting a head coaching job and had no idea he was actually going to be coaching the Titans. I realized that when I saw the family photo. Yeah, 8 kids for Robert Saleh. And one of them was not happy to be in that picture. I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, well, there's already a great Photoshop out there of a certain other coach in the AFC South as the child. So
yes,
that will continue to pop up throughout his entire tenure.
We hope so. We hope it will be used.
Right.
615-737-1025 is the phone number. If you want to text or call our phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Lots to get into on Robert Saleh's introductory press conference. The main thing that we've talked about since Robert Saleh got hired is what's the plan for Cam Ward. And hiring Brian Daboll was a great start. We heard more about Robert Saleh's plan for the young quarterback, and we will talk about that next. 615-737-1025. Jake Lyman, Connor Newt, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game. Next man up, 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman, Connor Newt, Parker Kelly with you on this Friday, reacting to Robert Saleh's introductory press conference yesterday. After 10 days since he was reported to be hired, he finally spoke. And I think overall, good takeaways with Robert Saleh. But the big thing everyone wanted to hear was his plan for Cam Ward. And Parker, do we have his clip on what his plan was for Cam Ward? Because I know that was an early question at the press conference. It was kind of what everybody wanted to hear. Paul Kuharsky, I believe, asked the question. Here's what Robert Saleh had to say about the plan for the young QB.
Hi, Robert. Paul Kuharsky from paulkuharsky.com. Can you walk us through a bit your plan for Cam Ward and how you and Brian expect to get the most out of him heading into his second year and into his career?
No, absolutely. Great question, too. You know, like Cam, from everything that I've gathered, just all the discussions I've had throughout the building and throughout the league, comes with an elite work ethic, elite character, an elite person. And, you know, when you look at his body of work as a rookie, a lot of these rookies, when they come in through the middle of OTAs. But so the biggest thing that we're going to work with Cam, just going all the way back to the beginning, you know, we've gotten a whole off season to work with him, take him back to the very, very beginning, both on the field, off the field, the process at which what it looks like to not only be a professional with regards to preparation in his body, but as a professional with regards to preparing from a game planning standpoint or a playbook standpoint. But, you know, just talking with Dabes over the course of the last few weeks, he is the perfect man to match up with Cam and to maximize who he is. So again, we're really pumped to get to work with Cam and get him to where we all know he can be.
So that was Robert Saleh talking about his plan for Cam Ward. Couple of interesting things there. I've said it, and I think Robert Saleh knows it too, that Brian Daboll is kind of the perfect match for Cam Ward in terms of the experience that Daboll has. And I thought it was also interesting. They talked about how they run a different system than most of the league does. Brian Daboll does. So that's going to differentiate Cam Ward from a lot of other quarterbacks. The big thing there, though, was we're taking him all the way back to the beginning. I don't know if it's just me, Connor, but I kind of took that to mean we're going to try and erase anything that was said to him this year by Brian Callahan and his staff. We want to start his development with our guys and make sure that those bad habits are thrown away.
Yeah, that's fine with me. I don't know about you. I'm good with the non-QB guru ideologies being erased from him. Look, I mean, we know all about Brian Daboll. We've seen his growth throughout the league. We've seen what he's capable of doing with a quarterback. He is one of the main reasons that you have MVP Josh Allen right now. So, look, he's not perfect. He obviously had his flaws as a head coach, but as a coordinator, I love the idea of him being here. I love the fact that he is here because even if he's only here for 1 year, that could be a major step in the development of Cam Ward, just learning some of the things that Brian Daboll is going to teach him. You could see some major steps from Cam Ward in his sophomore season because he finally has someone who we know is capable of developing an elite quarterback. And I'm not saying Cam Ward is an elite prospect, but I do think he's one of the better prospects in the entire NFL. Obviously, he's your most important prospect if you're the Titans. You just use the number 1 overall pick on him. So I like the idea that Brian Daboll is here. I like the idea that he's going to be the head coach of this offense. I'm curious to see how they attack that in free agency and even in the draft. I would expect they would go after some decent receivers that potentially could be your number 1. Cough, cough, Wan'Dale Robinson. Go Wildcats. But
you want Wan'Dale?
Oh, yeah. I think he's great. I don't know if he's a number 1, but you saw some of the things he did with Jackson Dart this season. And
I just don't know if he fits. Like a little smaller guy like Chim Dike, I think, has what you hope Wan'Dale Robinson would be.
Yeah, but I think you saw kind of the things he was capable of doing with Jackson Dart this season. And this is a different argument, but you could make the argument Jackson Dart had a better season than Cam Ward. We're not going to get into that, but I like the idea of having a guy that can kind of go under the line and under the radar and get open. He's a speed threat. Look, I don't think he's a number 1. I think he'd be perfect as a number 2, but who realistically out there are you going to get as your number 1? I don't know the answer to that, but I like the idea of Wandell. He's got familiarity with Brian Daboll. I think that's the main thing that comes with it. But Juwan Jennings comes to mind for me as well. But I like the idea that they're going to try and revitalize this offense under Daboll, and him being sort of the head coach of that area of the football team is exciting to me. So I think it's a great hire. I think the staff is rounding out nicely. Obviously, we'll know what it looks like on the field in a long time from now, but still, I like the idea of a well-rounded out staff and the offense being helmed by Brian Daboll.
Yeah, and I really liked Robert Saleh. He made the comparison of Brian Daboll is going to be, to me, what I was to Kyle Shanahan, of I'm going to hand him the offense. That doesn't mean I'm not going to check in and be helpful with game planning, but I'm going to basically let him run the show over there, and I trust him that he's going to be the offensive guy. And I know the Josh Allen comparison probably gets old because
Sure,
you are comparing him to Josh Allen, who is one of the greatest development stories that we've seen. Went from 53% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions in his rookie season, to 2 years later, 69% completion percentage, 4,500 yards, 37 touchdowns, 10 picks. Like, that doesn't happen to most people. But the reason we can make that comparison is because you have the coach who aided in that now on your staff as your offensive coordinator. So I think that's why we can make those comparisons. That doesn't mean Cam Ward's going to turn into an MVP. You hope he does. Obviously that's the goal, but I think you can see that the parallels between Josh Allen and Cam Ward and what they needed to work on are there, which should give Brian Daboll a pretty good idea of where he needs to start in developing Cam Ward.
Yeah, and it is kind of a moot point just because Cam Ward and Josh Allen are two completely built different quarterbacks. I mean, we know what Josh Allen is. He's this giant that will just bulldoze you over, and Cam Ward's strongest suit isn't his legs like it is Josh Allen. So they're two completely different quarterbacks, and it's going to take two different things to develop them. And look, like you said, no one is saying that Cam Ward is going to become this MVP candidate immediately. It's just not how it works. But I'm just excited about the idea that you have a proven guy that's capable of developing a quarterback on your staff. And maybe this is a one-year thing. I heard Paul Kuharsky ask about that yesterday, and Saleh seems pretty confident that there's going to be a plan under Daboll if he is to succeed the way we hope he does here and go off and get a head coaching job somewhere else. But the ideas stick with the quarterback, right? The ideas that Daboll is going to bring to the table for Cam Ward hopefully are going to stick with him for the rest of his career. So I think that's something to look out for. I think you're going to see some new mechanics from Cam Ward throughout the offseason that kind of like you said, and kind of like Robert Saleh alluded to, they're going to undo what was already done. And maybe that's a dangerous game we're playing, but given we saw some of the things Cam Ward is capable of, I wouldn't mind undoing the things that the recently fired head coach who can't get an offensive coordinator job anywhere else. I wouldn't mind undoing his ideas.
Well, and you have to remember, like, if we want to make the Josh Allen comparison, it's not like it was immediate. It took 2 years for him to actually make that leap. His 2019 season was pretty modest. It was better, but 59% completion, 20 touchdowns, 9 picks, just over 3,000 yards in 16 games. Like, it's not like Josh Allen just one day woke up and became an MVP level quarterback. It took time, and we'll see. Brian Daboll, maybe it is you have to take a step back, and as Robert Saleh said, take him back to the beginning to move forward and hopefully build those right habits. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. 3280 on the text line says the only number one wide receiver available is at the 4th pick. And I will disagree with that.
I actually do too.
I think the only number one receiver you're going to find is in the draft. But wide receiver is such a strange position. Yes, sometimes there are those, number one can't miss wide receivers in the draft. Like we're talking about Jeremiah Smith. Jamar Chase was one of those guys. He hasn't lived up to the hype as much, but like Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors, those are the guys that you felt like, all right, those are top 5 picks at wide receiver.
Elite upside.
Right. There aren't any, like, I like Carnell Tate. I like Jordan Tyson. I don't know if they're 4th overall pick material. And as an example, I look back at the 2017 draft, which everybody can remember. The Titans took Corey Davis 5th overall. The Chargers took Mike Williams. The Bengals took John Ross. Have any of those guys really turned out to be number one wide receivers? Mike Williams has been okay, but not number ones. Look over in the 3rd round of that draft. Cooper Kupp, 3rd round pick to the Los Angeles Rams. Chris Godwin, 3rd round pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Kenny Golladay, I know he didn't work out with the Giants, but Kenny Golladay was pretty darn good with the Lions. He was a 3rd round pick as well. So you just never know. And I think the Titans, if you pick the right guy in the 2nd or 3rd round, you could find a future number one type wide receiver, because this wide receiver class, I think it's deep. I think I saw Daniel Jeremiah said he has 12 of his top 50 are wide receivers. And we're getting off topic here, but I really do think that the right move for the Titans is take your pass rusher first and then go find a wide receiver, because it's much more common to find a star wide receiver on day 2 than it is to find a star pass rusher.
Yeah, I mean, we could go with recent examples of late round wide receiver picks that have become all pro caliber players. Look at Puka Nacua. I mean, that was a 5th round pick right there. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Yeah, a guy that
Dez Fitzpatrick.
You passed over for Dez Fitzpatrick, who we have no idea where he is anymore. So there are very, very obvious examples of that, and they're rare cases, but it's not impossible. I don't think.
Well,
go ahead, Jake. Sorry.
I'm not saying that you're going to just bank on your 4th round pick becoming a star, but
no.
I do think that if you do your scouting and you find a group of wide receivers that you can pick at 35, like, you can find a number one wide receiver at number 35 in the draft. You just have to be convicted and make sure you find the right guy. Obviously, that's easier said than done. I just think you play the numbers and you say, where can we find a number one wide receiver? There's not going to be one in free agency. And I just don't know that the separation between Carnell Tate and Jordan Tyson and Mekhi Lemon all the way down to like Jeremy Bernard, I just don't know if it's as separated as it is on the edge side, where if you get a Reuben Bain or a David Bailey, that might be a difference maker, whereas the edge rushers at the top of the board in the 2nd round probably aren't going to be difference makers.
Yeah, and I think fans need to go into this knowing that this isn't going to be an overnight change. This isn't going to be, hey, all of a sudden we're Super Bowl contenders just because we hired Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll. No, it's not how it works. Look at this roster and how things are working in the front office. They got a long way to go. They've got to get this draft right. First off, they got to make sure this coaching hire is right, because that is very, very important to the development of this football team. But you got to make sure you get the draft right and allocate your free agency money right and take advantage of your salary cap. You got a lot of things that need to play into your favor before you can even think about being a contender. And look, they got to get this draft right. I'm on board with they need to take an edge rusher, and then if you have the opportunity to take a wide receiver later on in the 2nd and 3rd round that you feel good about, then that's fine with me. But I don't really want to talk about the draft right now. I like talking about the prospect. We got a long time to talk about the draft, Jake. So
right, we got pulled off topic there, but there will be plenty of time to talk about the players they need to bring in. The Titans have brought in most of their coaches, including Robert Saleh, who was introduced yesterday. We'll continue to talk about his press conference. Another big question that everybody had, because Albert Breer reported back when Saleh was hired that one of the big reasons the Titans hired Robert Saleh was he had a detailed plan for Cam Ward, including a succession plan if his offensive coordinator was to leave. He spoke a little bit about that. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Jake Lyman, Connor Newt, Parker Kelly, next man up, 1025 The Game.
No, we've really excited about the staff that we've been able to assemble over the last week since we officially locked arms, if you will. But there's a plan. I think when you look at our staff, and obviously there's still some things that are fluid before we announce all of them to you, but we've got a tremendous mixture of experience and youth. We've got some young guys that'll be on the offensive staff that we feel are on the fast track to becoming coordinators. And like I said, for me, the succession plan comes from my seat in terms of what our plan is for each individual coach and how we develop them. You know, I've talked about it before. You know, the most cliche statement a coach can make is that it's our job to develop players. It's like, well, no kidding. Of course, that's our job, but who are the people developing the coaches who are asked to develop the players? You can have a coach in the Stone Age that's developing his player, but his player's never going to leave the Stone Age. So how are we keeping our coaches up to date, evolving, staying ahead of the game? So our players are constantly evolving and staying ahead of the game. So we have a program for that to make sure that our coaches are constantly evolving and pushing the envelope of what they're capable of, no different than we're going to ask our players to push the envelope of what they're capable of. So to go back to your original question, there's a plan in place. It'll kind of be revealed once we start showing off revealing our coaches. But it goes beyond the name of the coaches that are involved. It's going to go to the development that we expect them to have.
That was Robert Saleh yesterday in his introductory press conference. One of the big questions was this succession plan that Robert Saleh has for his offensive staff. If Brian Daboll was to be hired away as a head coach, who would step in and continue to develop Cam Ward? And that's what Robert Saleh had to say. Jake Lyman, Connor Newt, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game. And Connor, the way he talked about that, it kind of seems like they do have someone who is going to be the OC in waiting. Shea Tierney has been rumored and reported to be the next Titans quarterback coach, but he's one of Daboll's guys, and I would guess if Daboll left, he'd probably bring Tierney with him. So maybe it's somebody else, but the way Saleh implied that, you know, once we announce the staff, you guys will find out more about it. Maybe there is someone who's going to be kind of the OC in waiting behind Brian Daboll.
And I think that's a smart plan because obviously if you have the success that you hope to have with Brian Daboll, chances are he's probably going to get a head coaching gig somewhere else. He's going to get a second crack at it if he's capable of making Cam Ward and this Tennessee Titans offense look competent, which seemed impossible last year. I understand, but we got a lot to go. We got free agency in the draft, and I'll keep hammering that one out. But I think it's smart to have a contingency plan if Brian Daboll is to leave after this year. And no one's saying he will, but I think if he has the success that you hope he has, he's going to get looks. He's going to get opportunities to be a head coach somewhere else. But yeah, it's smart to have a succession plan if you're Robert Saleh, because obviously you're a defensive guy. And like you said last segment, Jake, that doesn't mean you're not getting involved in some offensive things. That doesn't mean you're not checking in and taking a peek at it. But the main person that is operating that offense is Brian Daboll. He's the offensive coordinator on a defensive coach's staff. So it will be interesting to see when we get to that point, if he does get some looks, if they have the success that they hope to have. It will be interesting to see, but I do think it is smart to have a contingency plan if that happens.
Right, because Brian Daboll, I mean, he got serious looks from a couple of different teams to be their head coach moving forward. The Bills, the Raiders. So if that's happening after he just got fired, imagine what happens if Cam Ward takes a big step this year and the Titans win 8 or 9 games.
Right.
He's probably going to be gone. And we've seen firsthand what happens when a really good play caller leaves. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We feel like Daboll is going to be a good choice, but we also haven't seen him call plays with this offense and this team. But if he does have a good year, we've seen what happens. Arthur Smith had 2 of the best years offensively for the Titans ever. And he leaves. Todd Downing was able to kind of keep it somewhat afloat for a year, but then it all fell apart. And I would hope with a young quarterback who you took number 1 overall that you know where you're going to go if that's going to happen. So having that offensive coordinator in waiting would make sense. I'm not really sure who that's going to be. The guys that we've seen that are going to be on the offensive staff. Luke Stalker sticking around at tight ends coach. Is that somebody that they have high hopes for, that they've been able to hold on to from the previous staff? You also bring in Tierney and Brasillo from the Giants. Again, those are Daboll's guys. I have to wonder if they would stick around if Daboll left for a head coaching job. So the one guy that I kind of look at and say, maybe this is who they're talking about, would be the wide receivers coach, Greg Lewis, who they brought over from the Ravens. Maybe that's somebody that they feel is an up-and-comer that can learn under Daboll for a year and then take over, or 2 years, or whatever it ends up being.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be some kind of a plan, right? They've alluded to it, and you have somewhat of a well-rounded offensive staff, they feel like. So there's definitely a succession plan. My thing is right now, kind of like what Kaharski said, I don't want to fire or get rid of Brian Daboll before he even gets here. I don't really want to talk about, well, what happens when he leaves, because he isn't here yet. They haven't started with him yet. We haven't seen what he's able to do on the field with Cam Ward yet. So I don't really want to get ahead of ourselves here and hire the next offensive coordinator before the one you have comes into the building. But you are right. I think it's important to look at succession plans and who they believe is capable of taking this offensive coordinator job. But as of right now, Brian Daboll is the coordinator. I'm excited to see what he does with Cam Ward.
No, me too. And I do feel that we are getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves. We don't know if Brian Daboll is going to be the perfect fit. I think it looks good on paper with his experience and with what Cam Ward does. It looks good on paper.
The head coach looks good on paper.
We are right. I think it all kind of the staff in general, the moves they're making, I think it's easy for Titans fans to get behind them. You bring in a lot of experience in all three phases with Robert Saleh, Brian Daboll, Bowens Fossil, Carmen Brasillo on the offensive line. I think you can get behind a lot of these, but that doesn't mean they're going to work, right? Like we were all behind, oh, well, Brian Callahan's coming. He's the guru. And guess what? He's bringing his dad, Bill. This staff is going to revolutionize the offense. And obviously it never happened. I think there's a little bit more proof in the pudding this year with the totality of the staff that they're putting together. Like all of these guys have experience, and you can look back and say, all right, it looks like it's going to work, but you don't want to get ahead of yourself and say, oh, just because these guys were good in their previous spots means they're going to completely turn this thing around. They got to go prove it. And we will see if they're able to do that this year. And I'm sure Robert Saleh does have a plan in case Brian Daboll does move on.
Yeah, I mean, we're fantasy booking it right now. We're going best case scenario. Best case scenario, the Titans win 10 games and Brian Daboll moves on because they had such a successful season on the offensive end. We're playing best case scenario because that's the only thing we can think of. We can't think of any negatives right now because we haven't been shown them. We haven't been shown any malpractice on the field or any bad interviews or bad comments from Robert Saleh or anyone on the staff because we've only had an introductory press conference, which is basically impossible for you to lose unless you just catastrophe. I don't even know the adjective to use there. Unless you just come in and just tank it. It's impossible to lose that interview. So we're going best.
It's the honeymoon phase is what we're all in right now. It's, you just got your new coach. Oh, and man, he brought in Robert Saleh brings in Brian Daboll and he keeps Bowens Fossil. It's like, oh my goodness, this is going to be perfect. It's a honeymoon phase. And, I think you have to have optimism given where this team came from and the type of experience, the good experience that these guys have. But that doesn't mean it's going to work. And coaches can do everything that they can, and they're going to do as much as they possibly can to set up their team to succeed. But it all does depend on the talent on the roster. And that's what the next few months is going to show us is, can the Titans get this roster back into a spot where you're giving Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll the ingredients they need to build a playoff contender again?
Yeah, look, honeymoon phase is the perfect way to put it, Jake, because like I said, there are no negatives right now. We don't know anything, but it's just a matter of watching this play out. How do they piece things together? How does the draft go? And then we'll get to OTAs and, mini camps and training camps. There's a long way to go before we see this team hit the field again. We're not even done with this current season. So
no, we are not.
We got a long way
to go. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll wrap up the second hour after this. Robert Saleh did a lot of the speaking yesterday, but we did hear a little bit from Mike Borgonzi, and I want to talk a little bit about his comments on what made Robert Saleh the guy. We'll do that next. Jake Lyman, Connor Newt, Parker Kelly, next man up, 102.5 The Game.
But a lot of the research that we did on Robert from the places he's been was everything that we were looking for. When I laid out those leadership qualities, the people that we talked to, he exemplified all of it. I mean, we called coaches, we called scouts, we called players that he coached before. And so then when we had the opportunity to bring him in, you could feel his leadership as soon as he walked in. Robert has a presence about him. And then he was very thoughtful in everything that he laid out, from the off-season program to training camp, the way he was going to do practices. He's very in tuned in the weight room as well, as you can see. He had a plan for everything. Player development was a big part of it. That was one thing that we heard over and over again. He can develop players. Going through his plan for player development and the things he does with the coaches to develop his players. Obviously, the scheme that he's run. I mean, he's a high football IQ. And then really the biggest thing was the person too. Every person we called, Robert is a great human being. So when he talks about people, we want great people here. And that's a big part of it.
Yesterday talking about why Robert Saleh was the guy. And we've gone through it a couple of times of the process sped up for Robert Saleh. He's eliminated Saturday night, and by Monday night, he's the head coach. It happened very fast. Jake Lyman, Connor New, Parker Kelly, next man up here. And Connor, it just felt like the Titans must have been locked in on him early with the talk of the research that they did, the people that they talked to. I don't know if he was their first choice all along, and we'll never get to know that. But I do think the Titans were locked in on him as a heavy candidate early. And when he became available, they wasted no time getting him in the building.
I don't think they ever locked in on one specific guy. Like, they looked at one guy and said, that's the guy we had to have from the beginning. I think
except for Harbaugh, maybe.
Yeah, but that's the kind of guy you do that for. But
right.
I think they looked at 3 to 4 potential finalists and said, okay, let's do some deep dive research on this. And we'll never know the answer to that, obviously. I think Saleh was one of them, obviously. I think Matt Nagy was one of them. Mike McCarthy, as much as people like to throw him out there, I don't think he was ever one. There were other finalists as well. What's his name with the Dolphins is now Jeff Hafley. I think he was kind of looked at as well. But I think they did their research on Robert Saleh. And Robert Saleh obviously did some research on the Titans as well. It sounds like a good match because both of them want each other. Robert Saleh wants to be here. Oh, he's said in multiple interviews, and he said it yesterday in the press conference, this was his number one destination when it came to openings. So I like that he did his research. I like that he is excited enough to do a deep dive on the roster and probably an even deeper dive on the defense that he has. So I like that about him. And I like that Mike Borgonzi was open and honest enough to say, this is the guy that we want to helm our football team because of the things he's done across this league. Now, he could have said that about Brian Callahan as well, who we all know it wouldn't have been as valid because Brian Callahan didn't call plays as an offensive coordinator. But I think I like the match between these two sides because I think I like the research and the attention to detail they have towards each other. Again, we're in the honeymoon phase. There are no negatives at this point that we can think of. But I like that the match has been made because of the things they've said about each other and the things that they've done their research on.
Yeah, I think you can look at Borgonzi and Saleh and say that's a pairing that seems to have some legs to it. Like I think they complement each other well. It's just it's gonna depend on, can Mike Borgonzi and his scouting staff pick the right players? And can Robert Saleh develop the young guys who are already there? I mean, we've talked about it basically since last year of the Titans are planning to try and be back in contention for that new stadium when it opens in 2027.
Yeah.
So I think this year, Robert Saleh, it's not a gimme year, right? Like you go 1-16 and things might get hot really quick. But I think he's going to get the runway here to have some progress this season, and then hopefully 2027 you have the pieces on your roster to really start to get back into that in the AFC South and maybe the AFC as a whole. They were asked about the expectations for this first season, and I thought the answer, it was a lot of coach speak from Robert Saleh, right? Of, we're focused more on the process than the results. But I also think it was a better answer than like when Big Joe asked Brinker and Borgonzi last year, can this team win the Super Bowl? And they kind of like smirked at it. Like Saleh said, everybody's goal every year is to win the Super Bowl, but we've got to lock in on what we're doing day by day, and hopefully that leads to the results that we want in the end.
Yeah, it's coach speak, but there was something yesterday I noticed, and I was thankful that it didn't happen. Did you notice someone seemingly missing from said press conference?
Yes, so watching the whole thing, I was waiting for them to do the picture because, they're going to do the picture with all of the big decision makers with him holding up the jersey, and they cut the stream off before they actually showed it. And I had not seen Amy at that point.
Well, there was someone else that wasn't there either.
Oh, you're not talking about Amy?
No. Where was Chad Brinker?
That is true. I did not see Chad Brinker.
Yeah, I mean,
they're trying to phase him out.
Yeah, phase him out. Yeah, right. Well, he's not a primetime decision maker on this decision anymore. I think it was the right move not having him there, because what did he contribute to the search? Obviously, they made it a point that Mike Borgonzi was spearheading this search for the coach. So what sense would it make to have Chad Brinker out there talking? It wouldn't. So I'm thankful that they didn't have him out there. And quite honestly, I'm not a big Chad Brinker fan as it is. I don't know what he could have possibly contributed to that conversation.
No, it does kind of feel like on a TV show, if they introduce a character and they just don't get a whole lot of great reaction from the fans, and they just start to phase him out. Just, you see him less and less, and then eventually they're just gone. I wonder if that's what's happening with
How
Chad
will
Brinker.
The Titans kill off Chad Brinker?
Not going that far, but I wouldn't be shocked if Chad Brinker is not part of this organization in a year.
I mean, he'll be used as a scapegoat if things go wrong. It's
well, and even that, I think it's just like Borgonzi won. Winning maybe isn't the right word, but he has taken over control of the football operation. I think Brinker maybe is going to be seen as less of a necessity, and either the Titans move on or he wants to move on somewhere else. But I was kind of happy to not see him at the press conference yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the story of our lives. Chad Brinker is there and Amy Adams isn't, and now neither of them are there. And unless he was there and they cut the stream off before the picture, but at least
maybe he was. I did not see, but yes, he was not, at least not evidently, he was not sitting front and center. Dustin from Hopkinsville says, guys, obviously Chad is the mastermind and he's placed everything as it should be. He's in the lab. Yeah, with his
cancer curing AI model. Yeah.
Yeah, great stuff from Robert Saleh yesterday. Glad to finally hear from him after a week and a half, but it was good to finally hear him speak. I have to hop off here, but I appreciate Connor and Parker holding it down for the final hour here on Friday. Gentlemen, it's been fun. If you're looking for something to watch or listen to this afternoon, Vandy women's basketball, 2 p.m. coming up against Ole Miss. Big one, 1:45 pregame show over on 94.9 The Fan. Gentlemen, thanks for hanging out, and I will talk to you guys soon.
Bye, Jake.
Bye, Jake. Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye, everybody. Yes, have fun. Connor and Parker are going to take you the rest of the way. I will be back live in Nashville on Monday. Looking forward to react to everything that happens this weekend. Next man up, third hour coming up next here on 102.5 The Game.
Next man up here on 102.5 The Game, hour number 3 on this Friday. Jake Lyman has departed. He is off on 94.9 The Fan, calling Vanderbilt's bout with Ole Miss in the women's basketball field. They're live in Birmingham due to the weather, but he is over there on 94.9 The Fan. So Connor Newt, myself, Parker Kelly himself, taking you through the rest of the hour. And we've talked a lot about the Robert Saleh press conference. Of course, that's the number one thing that's happened in this city outside of the, freezing impending doom that has struck our city. And I hope all of you are safe and warm on this beautiful Friday. But outside of that, Robert Saleh has been the topic of conversation, and we can talk about the great things and all the good things he said yesterday. And there are a lot of them. There was one thing that I did not like. And Parker, I'm sure you will agree with this. In reference to how game planning is going to go, Robert Saleh kind of said that we can't really control the outcome of the game. And sometimes, I'm going to say it, folks, so cover your ears if you don't want to hear it, the ball won't bounce their way. I didn't like that. And I'll tell you why. I didn't like that because that's the coach's job. The coach's job of a football team is to ensure that the outcome of the game goes their way. And that's through timeouts. That's through managing the team. That's through challenges. That's through whatever a head coach does. That's quite literally the definition of a head coach, is to manage the outcome of a game. So to say that you can't control the outcome of a game, to me, is ludicrous. I didn't like that answer. That's the one thing that Robert Saleh said yesterday that I don't appreciate and I don't really like.
So we take you into the Game Nashville studios where we have Connor Newt bashing the candidate that he wanted so badly.
I'm not bashing.
I know. So I get what you're saying. And when he said the thing that he said about the ball and it's a weird shape, it did give me flashbacks to when Rand Carthon said that, I will admit. I understand, because I think of Miami, for example, where they played a great game versus Indiana, but it still wasn't enough.
Right.
So you can give 100% effort and still lose a football game. And that is just the way that football works, whether it's a doink off the field goal or, the ball. And cover your ears, Nashville, because I am going to repeat something that was said. It does bounce weird ways. That's just the nature of the game. So you can give 100% effort and still lose a football game. I think that's what he was trying to say, but I will agree with you. The way that it came off did give Rand Carthon vibes.
And look, maybe it was, just a bad speech. It was just, I understand what he was trying to say. I just don't really understand why you would say that. Look, it's such a minor thing. And like I've been saying all morning, we've got a long way to go before we actually see this product on the field. A long way to go, let me tell you. But I just think that, to say that kind of contradicts the reason you took the job, and that's to help control the outcome of this team's trajectory. And to say that, it's not really up to us to control the outcome of the game is kind of contradictory to yourself. It kind of undervalue the position in which you're saying you wanted so badly. And I'm not bashing Robert Saleh whatsoever. In fact, I love Robert Saleh. I'm just saying we got to play both sides of the field here. We can talk about the positives all day long. This isn't necessarily a negative. This is just the one thing he said yesterday that I wasn't particularly a fan of. So maybe minor gripe, and I'm curious of your thoughts. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. I'm just curious of the message that he's trying to send. I'm curious of, is he kind of pre-ordering excuses if things don't go their way? And I don't think that's the answer, but it is something that he said that I just wasn't particularly a fan of. I think I am a full-hearted believer that everyone on that field can control the outcome of the game. It's not on one individual person, and maybe that's what Robert Saleh was alluding to, but coaches need to be clicking on all cylinders. Players need to be clicking on all cylinders. Even the training staff needs to be clicking on all cylinders to control the outcome of the game, and a successful one at that. So for Robert Saleh to say we can't necessarily control that outcome, I wasn't particularly a huge fan of that. That's just the one thing that kind of irked me.
Yeah, and this is nitpicking. I don't think Robert Saleh, just given on the, what he said yesterday, knowing the type of person that he's been in the league for, however many years that he's been in the NFL, he doesn't strike me as an excuse maker. He strikes me as a pure football person. Jake was right when he walked in with his no-show socks and his dress shoes and his suit. Dude it looks like he just wants to be out on the field coaching. That he didn't give an opening statement yesterday, really. He said he's not big on opening statements. He just strikes me as a guy that wants to coach football and wants to play football. And given the type of work ethic, I believe he's a hard worker. You can tell by the way that he looks physically.
Football guy.
Yeah. So I don't think he's pre-ordering excuses, but if we're just nitpicking, which we are, that did come across a little weird.
And that's our job. We take things and we look at it through both sides. And quite honestly, I'll say it again. That was the only thing throughout that entire press conference that I didn't agree with him saying. And it's such a minor gripe that I don't even think it's an issue. This is probably the only time I'll ever talk about it. I'm not trying to say Robert Saleh is an immediate failure as a head coach because of that one comment. Or as Weston Hermitage says, I'm not trying to say Saleh is Carthon remade. I did find it ironic that was the term used, but I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just saying you're kind of contradicting the position that you're in by saying you can't control these things, because you can. That's the definition of your job. But to each their own. I don't think it's an issue. I think it's actually such a non-issue. This is probably the only time we'll ever talk about it. But since we're talking about the press conference and how great it was, which I've said it before, I'll say it again, an introductory press conference is 99% impossible for you to lose unless you just completely Adam Gase it, like a texter says. It's impossible for you to lose. So this doesn't knock down my opinion of Robert Saleh whatsoever. I'm excited about the future of the franchise with him at the helm. I'm excited about the development of Cam Ward with him and Brian Daboll. I'm excited about how the defense is going to look. I'm excited about the draft. We're getting into draft season. And let me tell you, draft season is my favorite season to talk about in sports talk because there's so many storylines that come into play. There's so many predictions we can make. And we're not quite there yet. We got to finish this season first with the Super Bowl in not this Sunday, but next Sunday. But we're getting into the nitty-gritty of the stuff that's not actual football being played on the field, and I'm so excited about that. But as far as this conversation is concerned, Robert Saleh, I didn't like that he made that comment. I understand where it was coming from, but I didn't like it. 615-737-1025. Jared from Spring Hill says Saleh made all kinds of excuses in New York. Sounds like this guy is more of a rah-rah with not a lot of depth to him. I didn't think he communicated his plan well, why he came here, because these people can't be that great. Let's be real. And he hasn't won. Not a lot of talk about winning yesterday, more about leadership and work ethic type stuff. That should come natural with a good coach, not what you lead off with. I disagree with that on some level. I think he kind of showed his personality, and I don't think he's going to come out like Barry Trotz would on this station, and we love Barry, but he is open book Barry. I don't think he was going to come out and say, all right, here's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to do this with Cam Ward this year, and then if this happens, and then we'll go blah, blah, blah. I don't think he was going to do that. I think yesterday was more about the personality of Robert Saleh and why he took this job, and they detailed it very clearly. He was interested. He did his research. He likes defense. He likes Cam Ward. Borgonzi was interested in a guy that is a leader of men. So they detailed that very clearly, in my opinion. But that's how an introductory press conference goes. It's all about the person and not the plan. And we'll learn more about the plan as we get towards spring training and OTAs and training camp and the draft. Did I just say spring training like baseball?
I don't know. Well, you do have your Cardinals hat on, so that would make sense. Maybe baseball's on your mind. We do know you're a big baseball guy.
I like baseball. Basketball is not going well for me, so we're getting towards baseball.
You're on to baseball.
I've mentally moved on, but we're going to find out more about the plan as we continue along. But yesterday to me was more about the person, Robert Saleh, and getting to know him and him getting to know that press room and that locker room. So that's kind of how I see things. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. We are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Coming up next, most of the NFL coaching hires are completed. There's still 2 more, and Parker, you and I are probably in consideration for those openings at this point.
We are.
But I want to talk about this. On paper, of course, because we haven't seen any of these coaches hit the field. But of the hires made, where does the hire of Robert Saleh rank league-wide? We'll get to that coming up next. Connor Newt, Parker Kelly here with you on Next Man Up on 102.5 The Game. Welcome back in. Next Man Up here on 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman has departed us to call Vanderbilt women's basketball as they take on Ole Miss over on 94.9 The Fan. Connor Newt, Parker Kelly here with you, talking about the Titans, of course. Robert Saleh's press conference yesterday, and overall, a good press conference. Like I said, pretty much impossible to lose an introductory press conference, but he won yesterday. I think you can say that. So, knowing what we know across the league, the hires that have been made, there are only 2 available jobs, which, Parker, you and I are in consideration for the Arizona Cardinals and the Las Vegas Raiders job.
I completed my virtual interview with the Browns yesterday.
Oh, well, I think you just got passed up by Todd Monken, but who cares what he's got to say?
The Raiders, that's what I meant to say.
Who cares what
I was
Todd,
thinking about Emmanuel Acho's
Yeah.
take.
Who cares what Todd Monken has to say? What has he ever won on an NFL level as a head coach? Nothing, because he's never been an NFL head coach. But knowing what we know about the hires that have been made, obviously we've seen some good hires, we've seen some bad hires. Where does Robert Saleh's hire by the Titans rank on the list this coaching cycle? I think it's not the best, obviously, because I think the Giants probably won that sweepstakes hiring John Harbaugh. But I would put it along the ranks of the Steelers and maybe the Falcons. I think the Steelers hiring Mike McCarthy is a transitional hire for them. I don't see him being longer than 5 years in Pittsburgh. I think that's a transitional hire until they find their next big guy. But what do I know? Pittsburgh likes to keep their head coaches. I think they'll probably run him to the extent of his contract, which is a 5-year deal. So I think they'll let him go, and then they'll hire their next young gun. That's how I think that'll work. The Falcons hired Kevin Stefanski, and I love that hire for them. I think he transitions over to Atlanta very well. And to me, Atlanta is the team that I think has the best prospects. I think that has the most capability of plugging and playing and winning now. It's just a matter of, do you think that Michael Penix is the guy at quarterback for them? And I'm not honestly quite sold on him just yet, but they've got pieces around him and Bijan Robinson and Drake London, and we'll see what they do with Kyle Pitts, but he wasn't utilized well under Raheem Morris or Arthur Smith. So I'm curious on how that works. But as far as that goes, and they've got a great defense as well, great pass rush. So I think that's the team that you can take and probably compete instantly. Not that I think the Falcons are immediate NFC title contenders, but with a little bit of tinkering and the right coaching policy, I think they can do some damage. So I would put Robert Saleh along the likes of that. I like the hire of Jesse Minter as well by the Ravens. Obviously, he's the Chargers defensive coordinator, and he fits well with that scheme. They needed a defensive coach just because that's kind of how they operate, and they've got a great defense. Not this year, but they've got pieces to have a great defense. The hires I didn't like, I think Todd Monken to the Browns is a terrible hire. I don't necessarily subscribe to Emmanuel Acho's complaints on that of what has he ever won in the NFL, but I don't like him as a play caller. I think he holds himself back in terms of his scheme. I'm not sure what he's capable of doing with a much depleted roster compared to Baltimore's. And you're kind of hinging yourself to Shedeur Sanders at this point, which who knows how that's going to work out. But I don't like the hire of Todd Monken. I don't like the hire of, well, Jeff Hafley is an okay hire. I think he was always predetermined to go there just because of his connections to the general manager. So I think he's a good hire. The Dolphins are just in a tough situation there with Tua Tagovailoa. Like, what are the Dolphins going to do at quarterback? It makes no sense to me what they're going to do. Are they going to tie themselves to Tua again? Are they going to ride it out with Quinn Ewers? Are they going to draft a quarterback? We'll see. But the Dolphins aren't a great job right now. So I guess credit to Jeff Hafley. Joe Brady, I'm curious of your thoughts on this one, Parker. Joe Brady is a good hire to me, but it's the route that the Bills took to hire him that I don't necessarily agree with. If you were going to fire Sean McDermott, I think you should have had an external coaching search, and maybe they did. They talked to Dayball. They talked to Phillip Rivers for some reason. But I think if you were going to internally hire someone, why would you hire the offensive coordinator of the offensive coach you just fired? That doesn't quite, or I'm sorry, McDermott's more of a defensive guy. But why would you, regardless, internally, if you just fired your ex, why would you rebound with the offensive coordinator? I don't quite understand the route they took there.
It gives me Dallas Cowboys vibes, and this is why I say that, because you fire Sean McDermott and you realize the window that you have with Josh Allen, the Super Bowl window that the Bills have. The owner, Terry Pagula, came out and said in his presser that they have a window and they haven't been able to get over the hump, basically. So they promote from within, which is like Joe Brady, I'm very high on Joe Brady. I wanted the
I am too.
Titans to interview him.
Yep.
I think that he's a couple of years late on getting a head coaching job. I thought he might get one sooner, but nonetheless, I like Joe Brady. It's just, if you're trying to get over the hump, why go with what you already have? It's the same thing with the Dallas Cowboys, where Mike McCarthy's contract expires, and then you promote Brian Schottenheimer, who's your offensive coordinator, to head coach,
who's fine.
he's a good play caller, but at the same time, the defense is still a massive problem in Dallas. And Dallas Cowboys fans, like Buffalo Bills fans, have high expectations. So if you're wanting a fresh message, a new message, promoting from within doesn't seem to be the right idea. Going and getting something extra or someone to come in from the outside to kind of give a new message seems like the better way to go about that. It's not that I have anything against Brian Schottenheimer or Joe Brady. That's just my thinking.
No, I agree with you. If you were going to hire someone after you fired your head coach who's had 10, or he's had the longest streak of 10 plus winning seasons in the NFL with the Buffalo Bills, if you were going to fire him, you should probably hire someone externally instead of promoting from within. So basically, you are keeping the same philosophy and message, and maybe things will change a little bit with an offensive coach at the helm instead of defensive, but still the same message applies. It's like cutting off one head of the Hydra. You just grows 3 more. So you cut off the head of the Hydra and promoted Joe Brady, and you're keeping
Great reference.
Thank you. Keeping the same thing. As far as who the Raiders and the Cardinals are going to hire, I have my interview later today, but I think Clint Kubiak is going to be someone that comes up for both. I can kind of see him going to Las Vegas just because no one else. It reminds me of the Saints situation last year, in which no one wanted that Saints job, and they landed on Kellen Moore, which ended up looking like a decent hire for them, given what their roster is.
And how they finished the year.
But let's not forget, no one wanted that job. They interviewed Mike McCarthy last year. He didn't want that job. They interviewed other people for that job, and no one wanted it. So Kellen Moore is going to be a good hire for the New Orleans Saints. And maybe Clint Kubiak or whoever takes that Raiders or Cardinals job is going to be a good hire for them. But it truly shows you that even though the Raiders and the Cardinals, the Raiders have the number 1 overall pick in this draft, it kind of shows you how attractive that job is just because of ownership and roster construction. Just because you have the number 1 overall pick, it doesn't mean that you are that attractive of a job. I think the Raiders are more attractive than the Cardinals. The Raiders have Genty and Bowers, and they've got some pieces on defense. Max Crosby, of course. The Cardinals, I mean, outside of Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride, who do they have? What are you going to do there? You don't have a quarterback. Kyler Murray's probably gone. Your defense, I guess, is fine. But, there's nothing that moves the needle there for me. So I'm curious to see how those shake out. All this to say, I think when you look across the league and you look at the hires that have been made, I think Robert Saleh to the Titans, at least on paper, is in the upper echelon of those hires. If we were to give it a letter grade, I would probably give it a B+.
Yeah, but speaking to your point about the Raiders and the Cardinals, I don't think Kyler Murray is going to be a Cardinal next year. And I don't know if you run it back with Jacoby Brissett. He might be fine as a bridge or, a stopgap quarterback because he fit their offensive system well. Well, Drew Petzing, their offensive coordinator, got hired by the Detroit Lions, so that system is no longer there. So do you really want to run it back with Jacoby Brissett? There's not a lot attractive about that job in this spot besides the high draft pick right now. But with the Raiders, there's not much more attractive, but at least you have Brock Bowers, you have Ashton Jeanty, 2 young pieces on your offense that will be foundational moving forward. You have a lot of cap space second in the NFL, and then you have the rights to draft Fernando Mendoza, which they probably will do. Yeah. So but it seems for the Raiders that it's Clint Kubiak or bust.
Right.
And if they don't get Clint Kubiak, I consider this head coaching search a failure for him.
Yeah, and I like Clint Kubiak. I don't think he's as proven as other guys that they have interviewed, but I like Clint Kubiak. The Arizona job, no one's talking about because that's such a hapless franchise. No one really cares. So I'm curious to see what they do there. The other thing that I think is hinging on this is outside of Fernando Mendoza, who I will take it to the grave, I think Cam Ward last year was a better prospect than Mendoza is this year, despite the Heisman Award. Outside of Mendoza, if you want a quarterback, this is not the year for you. There is no one out there other than Fernando Mendoza that I think is legitimately considered an NFL caliber quarterback.
There's Ty Simpson, who will have a first-round grade on him, and if you watch some of the throws that he's made on tape, it's NFL arm talent. It has it written all over the place, and I believe Ty Simpson can be a really great NFL quarterback. But if I were advising him, I might have suggested, and I get why he declared, because there's pressure on Kalen DeBoer to start Keelan Russell, who is this 5-star quarterback, a former Elite 11 MVP. So it's one of those deals where if you're Ty Simpson, you want to be remembered as Alabama's starting quarterback, a guy that stuck it out his entire career, rather than a guy who ended up transferring to a Miami or a Tennessee and finishing out his career that way. He wanted to be remembered as the Alabama starting quarterback, which I get. But he really could have benefited from coming back to school, because you look at games like in the Rose Bowl or even the SEC championships, probably the most glaring, where
or that Oklahoma
Georgia
game
or Indiana, they bring this all-out pressure blitz, and Ty Simpson's eyes get super wide. He doesn't know what to do. Panics. You go to the NFL, and defensive coordinators are going to jump on that, and then you're really in trouble. So I think he could have benefited coming back to school.
Yeah, I put him in the same category as Dante Moore. Dante Moore was viewed as the number 2 quarterback prospect in this draft, and obviously he's returning to Oregon. So, again, outside of Fernando Mendoza, who I still don't think is a sure thing to be an NFL caliber quarterback. He'll be a starter, obviously, but I don't know if he's going to be this elite level prospect like other draft analysts make him out to be. Outside of Mendoza, and maybe Ty Simpson, if you like the traits there is not a quarterback in this draft that is worth drafting. Ty Simpson, if I were in charge, and, I think he'll fall to like maybe the Steelers or something like that. Although in talking to Steelers fans, they really like Will Howard for some reason as an NFL starter. So we'll see how that works out there. But there's not really a quarterback here in this draft. So I think that plays into the attractiveness of these two jobs. You've got a high draft pick, and both teams need a quarterback. So you're going to have to find other methods to get a quarterback. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you have thoughts on that or want to get involved in the conversation. Coming up next, I know Jake's not here, and this is usually his thing, but I'll carry on the tradition. On Fridays at 11:30 on this program, we do our Monday headlines. And look, there's no football this weekend, so you can just go to anywhere you want to go. How's that sound? We'll do that coming up next, and we'll take your Monday headlines on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We'll do it coming up next, right here on Next Man Up. Connor Newt, Parker Kelly here with you on 102.5 The Game. Oh, I love White Girl Fridays so much. I mean, this is the best day of the week, is it not?
I can't think of one better.
No, I mean,
Truthfully.
I mean, you guys didn't have TD Thursday yesterday, did you?
No, but we still got our Meek Mill in. That's
Okay,
for sure.
That's good. Meek Mill Thursdays. Corey's got his throwback, which apparently he doesn't like warrant, and I don't understand that.
He doesn't like cherry pie.
How do you not like cherry pie?
I don't know.
That's
a conversation we'll have to have with Big Joe.
That's a fantastic song. Welcome back in. Next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Jake Lyman has departed. He is off calling Vanderbilt women's basketball as they take on Ole Miss over on 94.9 The Fan. So Connor Newt, Parker Kelly here with you, finishing out the show as we get you set for noon when Chase and Big Joe take over the airwaves. As we do every Friday on the program, whether it's with me, without me, with Jake, without Jake, we do our weekend headline, or I'm sorry, Monday headlines. Weekend headlines used to be the Saturday show thing. Our Monday headlines. And obviously, since there's no football being played this weekend, unless you consider flag football the Pro Bowl thing, which I will probably
It's on Tuesday.
Which is on Tuesday for some reason, and I will not be watching because who cares about that? We'll just go anywhere you want to go. There's a lot going on this weekend. There's college basketball. There's hockey. There's a certain event going on in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which I will probably do a headline for. So without further ado, Parker Kelly, your first of two Monday headlines.
Listen, guys, I'm going to echo what Joseph Rexroad said on the morning show, because I know there's no football this weekend, and trust me, no one's more sad about that than I am. But there are other things going on that are exciting. College basketball is doing great right now. There were a lot of great games last weekend, and guys, if you haven't seen this freshman class, it's truly incredible.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to go to the hardwood tonight. We have a classic Big Ten rivalry, in-state rivalry, mind you, between Michigan and Michigan State, the third-ranked Wolverines, at the seventh-ranked Spartans. We get Dusty May versus Tom Izzo. Michigan is a 1.5-point favorite, and I've been going back and forth on this one because I think Michigan State is playing really good basketball, but I think Michigan, they just came off a win at home versus the fifth-ranked, that's right, you heard me right, fifth-ranked Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Oh, yeah. Nebraska
By the
ball.
way, guys, Nebraska ball is legit.
They're for real.
Even though they lost their first game of the season on Tuesday night, they're legit. They could win the Big Ten. So I'm going to take Michigan to pull this one out close, I'd say by 2 or 3, against old rivalry Spartan. All right? Old Sparty. I'm going to take Michigan.
Yeah, the Big Ten is an interesting conference to me this year. I don't think they're as deep as the SEC, and the SEC's having kind of a down year, so take that as you will. But I think they're pretty top-heavy. The top of the Big Ten is elite national title contenders. Michigan, Michigan State, Purdue, Nebraska, Illinois is a really fun team to watch. So I think
I have a question for you after we finish this segment.
I'll have an answer for you. I will.
It's a good one. It's good for the audience too.
Sure. I'll also go to the hardwood for my first Monday headline. I think come Monday, we're having conversations about, is Mark Pope legitimately the right person for this Kentucky job? Mark Pope and the Kentucky Wildcats, my beloved Kentucky Wildcats, are headed to Fayetteville to take on the ex-coach, John Calipari. And they're favored by 7.5. I don't think that's enough. I think Calipari and company may win by 15 to 20. This Kentucky team is not bought in. If you saw the video that came out from Memorial the other day, their statement before the game on 3, 1, 2, 3, touch money. They're not interested in playing basketball. They're interested in the paycheck that comes with it.
Connor, I could not make it through that entire game.
I couldn't either.
It was a beatdown.
I was supposed to go.
I'm glad you didn't.
I had tickets.
For the sake of your mental health, I'm glad you did not go.
My mental health was already dwindling as we were without power for about 4 days. So we just decided, there were too many trees down in West End, and hopefully everyone that went made it home safely. But I was like, yeah, I would rather just watch it in this warm hotel room. And thank God I did that, because, oh boy, this is credit to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a good team, but this Kentucky team is just not it. So I think on Monday we're talking about Mark Pope in the future of the Kentucky Wildcats, because quite honestly, I think John Calipari and the Arkansas Razorbacks are going to win by 15. I think it's going to be,
And it's in Bud Walton,
in Fayetteville,
which should make anybody scared who's a Kentucky fan.
Yeah,
Because Arkansas at Bud Walton is a different team.
It is. Yeah, it's not going to be fun. I'm not excited to watch it. Your second of Monday headlines, Mr. Parker Kelly.
I'm sticking with college basketball because arguably the game of the weekend, it's definitely going to be the game of the day on Saturday, I believe. Guys, the Big 12 in basketball is so much fun to watch. Last weekend, I sat down and I watched Texas Tech and Houston, and it was a phenomenal basketball game. Not low scoring as you might think because of how good Houston's defense is. It was actually 90-86. So I'm not going to do math on the air. 176 combined points in that game. So Kansas is taking on BYU tomorrow. We get Darren Peterson versus AJ DeBansta, probably going to be 1 and 2 off the board in the upcoming NBA draft, and it's in one of the best venues in all of college basketball at the Fog, Allen Fieldhouse in Lawrence, Kansas. I think the Jayhawks have been playing really good basketball. The problem is Darren Peterson's been on and off with injuries. He's missed some time. He's come back, so that kind of ruins the chemistry a little bit. But when he's been out there on the court, they seem to be developing that chemistry. So he will be returning from an injury for this game, and I'm going to go Kansas to beat BYU in the Fog.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, it's tough to play in Lawrenceburg, Kansas. That's a tough place to play. It's one of the top 3 venues in college basketball, in my opinion. It would probably be, in no particular order, that one, Rupp Arena and Duke, Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Which, by the way, if BYU were to lose this game, that would be their 3rd loss in their last 4 games.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably, you're right. That's probably the 2 top freshmen. I really like Kingston Fleming out of Houston as well.
Man, he's a baller.
He's fun to watch. So that's probably 1, 2, and 3 in terms of the NBA draft. I really like that pick, though. Kansas is tough to beat at home. My second headline, maybe make some people mad that think we should only talk about sports, but there's a certain event going on in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on Saturday, tomorrow at 2 p.m. It's called the Royal Rumble in the sport of professional wrestling, and it's going to be a fun one. Let me tell you that. I think in terms of the Royal Rumble match, give me the tribal chief. Give me Roman Reigns to walk out, beat 30 other men, and main event WrestleMania once again. I think that's going to be a fun one.
How do you pronounce the city that it's in?
Riyadh.
Riyadh.
Mm-hmm.
See, looking at it, I would have read it Riyadh. Riyadh.
Riyadh.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern time.
2 p.m. Eastern.
So that's very convenient. Right in the middle of the day.
Yes, you can watch that, and then what I'll probably do is watch it on the big screen and dual screen with some college basketball.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea. So going back to the question I was going to ask you.
Go for it.
Is there a national championship contender in the SEC this year?
That's a tough question because the SEC is down this year. It's still a good conference. I still think it's the best conference in basketball. But, I mean, it depends on who's on and who's off. Alabama, when they're on, looks pretty untouchable. Florida, when they're on, looks pretty untouchable. But other than that, I'm not sure. I mean, everyone has seemingly lost their primetime players from last season. Florida, we thought reloaded with Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee out of Princeton, but they just haven't hit their stride. Honestly, if you were going to ask me today who I think is the most capable team of winning the SEC, I think it's the team down the street. I think it's Vanderbilt. I don't think Vanderbilt's a national title contender, but I think they're probably the most well-rounded team. A&M, I think, is atop the SEC, but I don't really believe in them. I haven't seen much out of them or a tough schedule out of them or really tough competition. They've competed with Tennessee in Knoxville, but this is kind of a down Tennessee team as well. So to answer your question, Parker, no, I don't really think there is a national title contender in the SEC as of right now. I think that might reside in the Big 10 or the Big 12. I like Michigan as a title contender. I don't know about Nebraska. They're legit, but I don't know if they're title contenders. I like Houston as a title contender. I think it resides in one of those 2 conferences. So To answer your question, no, I don't think there's a title contender in the SEC this year.
I think the closest title contender in the SEC is probably Florida.
Yeah,
They started out rough because they had a heck of a schedule.
they did.
But they seem to be figuring it out. So I think I would pick Florida, but still that seems like a long shot given how good. So think about the SEC. There was at one point last year where I believe the conference had 10 teams in the top 25. Right now, the SEC only has 4. And that's Arkansas at 15. And then you have Vanderbilt and Florida at 18, 19. And then you have Alabama, who's somehow in there.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Let's get to some of your headlines. And I'm debating if I should read this or not, but I'm going to do it anyway. 615-737-1025. Weston Hermitage on the text line says, Monday headlines. Angry Titans fans unite with pitchforks, and they plan as the march to the Rifleman's residence. A host on 1025 The Game that does not want his real name out after he clearly stated that the Saleh era is no different from Ran Carthon's era. Did I clearly state that? Did I say that?
Sounds like I'm not going to your house this weekend. I don't want to get caught up in all of that.
He says also, I didn't even know the Wildcats still played basketball. Guess I'll have to
I
watch
think they
sometime.
have a JV team down there in
The women's team is good.
Yeah.
The women, although they've lost 3 straight, but that's okay.
So Connor texted me the other day and said that mentally he's on to baseball season with Kentucky. I wonder when the last time a Kentucky fan said they're on to baseball season during the middle of basketball.
Yeah. Probably never been said in the history ever. Maybe with that BJ Boston team right out of the COVID year. That seemed
that was bad.
That was bad.
That was real bad.
That was real bad. We'll continue to take your Monday headlines if you want to get those in. 615-737-1025 is the phone number if you want to get those in. One final segment here on Next Man Up as we wrap things up and bring in Chase and Big Joe at the top of the hour. But coming up next, there have been rumors circulating that the Titans are going to do a redesign. There's an alleged new logo that has been revealed, and I have some thoughts on that. We'll get to that on the other side right here on Next Man Up on 1025 The Game. When you said this is the only way we could go out, I was expecting a lot, and you delivered. So well done. This is good stuff right here.
Wasn't this song in like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or something? One of those scenes?
I don't know. I got to rewatch those. The first two, or the first three. And then they did the reboot, and it was horrible. I don't think I ever saw it. Welcome back in. Next man up here on 102.5 The Game. Connor Newt, Parker Kelly finishing it out here as we get you set for Chasing Big Joe coming up in about 11 minutes or so. A little bit of breaking NFL news to give you. It doesn't necessarily pertain to the Titans, but it is kind of important. The Vikings have fired GM, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, which you kind of expected to happen given how they handled the whole Sam Darnold situation. He's in the Super Bowl, and they drafted 9, as they call him, J.J. McCarthy, who has been less than subpar as a starting quarterback. So can't say I'm too particularly surprised there, but it is noteworthy. It is some information on the NFL, and it is the sport we all love. Speaking of NFL changes, it's not confirmed yet. There have been some rumors, given the price markdowns on all current merchandise and jersey sales on the Titans website, that a rebrand is coming. And I've seen some mock-ups of the new logos and uniforms that have been released, and there's one that is gaining a lot of traction because it's displayed in the Titans house, I think, that it looks like may end up being the primary logo for the new Titans. And it's not good. I don't like it.
Well, I've seen very little of what the new Titans uniforms could look like in all these rumors because I'm trying to avoid it just because I want to be surprised.
Right. And we have no idea what it looks like. But the mock-up I'm talking about is essentially the flaming thumbtack without the flame. It just looks like a thumbtack with the 3 stars and the T. It just looks so boring. I don't like it. And people are like, well, it looks like a Greek mythological shield. And I personally think either the Titans should keep the current logo they have because it's historical and everyone seems to like it, or transition to the sword because I think the sword would give you some identity. I think the sword is cool. I think the sword would look good with a recolor if they decide to go the Houston Oilers route of colorways and, you know, the light blue, red, and white. I think a blue helmet would look really, really good. A light blue helmet with a red face mask. That's just me. But as far as this logo is concerned, I don't like it. I don't think it looks good. It doesn't give you really any identity. It's kind of just a watered down version of the logo you already have. It's just like, it's not great. It's like someone took a water bucket over the flaming thumbtack and now it's just the thumbtack.
Now it's just I can't imagine that in my mind, what that would look like.
I'll show you once we get off the air.
Man, that does sound terrible.
It's not that great, but a lot of people really like it. I don't really understand it, but a lot of people really like it. I like the sword. I think the sword would give you some identity. It'd look good on a helmet. You could kind of go along the route of what the Chargers and the Rams and who's the other one that does the Vikings do, of kind of having that alternate logo on their helmets. It's really cool. It looks good. But a lot of people do the mock-ups of the helmets with the flame, and I really like that. But obviously you won't have that if you deflame the thumbtack. Don't deflame the thumbtack. We really need the thumbtack. I'm excited for a rebrand. I think it's time. I don't hate the current set of uniforms, but I don't love it.
I'd like to see red alternates. I think that would be really cool. Kind of like, you know, the Bills, they do their red alternates. I'd maybe like to see white chrome helmets, kind of
cool.
like the Vikings do.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
See, I don't mind when the Vikings do it, but when the Packers do it, I can't stand it.
No, it looks terrible.
I cannot stand when the Packers do it.
They're too traditional, as I just punched my mic with the southpaw. They're too traditional of a team to wear anything other than the yellow helmets and the yellow pants. It's not what they should be doing. But I personally think they should go back to the white helmet or do a light blue helmet. My favorite uniform set of all time was the original Titans. They would wear the white helmet, the white top, and the light blue bottoms. I think it would look so good on the road. So I would be interested to see that again. But even the Houston Oilers, they would do white helmet, white top, and then the light blue bottoms.
Have any of these rumors incorporated the color black?
No.
Because do you remember that video that was released by the Titans that had like a bucket of paint spilling over?
That was oil.
Oil. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That was for the Oilers throwbacks, I think.
Yeah. So I wonder if there's going to be black in any of the new uniforms.
Well, you may see it in that rivalry stuff.
Maybe. I don't know.
We'll see.
I don't know how I'd feel about that.
I don't know. I think it'd be weird. I think red would be the move if you're
Yeah,
going to
I
go with
agree.
an alternate. That'll do it for us here on Next Man Up today. I appreciate Jake Lyman for allowing me to fill in for an hour and doing an hour with him. For Jake Lyman, Max Herz, Parker Kelly, my name is Connor Newt saying so long. Tune in tomorrow, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. for the Weekend Huddle with myself and Nick Frazier. We'll talk a little bit more about this Robert Saleh press conference and among some other things. Maybe some Preds hockey finds its way into that conversation. But for all them, this is Connor Newt saying so long. Chasing Big Joe coming up next, live from the Omni Nashville Hotel right here on 102.5 The Game.